Hey, it's Dave here. If you're using custom Home Assistant dashboards, this is the video for you. We're diving deeper into layouts, custom cards, and some advanced tricks to get everything looking just right across your devices. Now, this is part 2 of my dashboard series. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'd recommend giving it a watch first. Link in the description. In this video, we'll install a custom dashboard from HACS, add a slick-looking custom clock, and I'll walk you through using vertical stack, horizontal stack, and grid cards in both Masonry and Sections view. Then as a bonus, I'll show you how I added a bus timetable to my dashboard using data from a Node-RED process flow. Let's get started. First, I'll show you how to install Dwains dashboard through HACS, just as an example, so you can follow the same steps to install any custom dashboard you like. One nice feature of a Dwains dashboard is that it automatically groups your devices and entities by area, which can be really helpful if you're just starting out or want something that works straight out of the box. To install Dwains dashboard, if you head over to HACS, and then do a search for Dwains, and then click on this. If you want to read further documentation on the installation process, you can go to this link here, which takes you to this web page that details all of the steps to either install via HACS or if you want to install it manually. For this example, we're just going to install via HACS. So you're going to click download, then click download again, and then you're going to restart Home Assistant. So go to Developer Tools. Whilst you're at it, check the configuration, and then click Restart. Once Home Assistant has restarted, you're then going to head over to Settings, go to Devices and Services, go to Add Integration, and you're going to do a search for Dwains. Then click on that and click Finish. And now that dashboard has been installed. On the top left, you should see you've got your default dashboard, which is this one here, and you've got the Dwains dashboard underneath. If you want to make the Dwains dashboard your default, if you go to Settings, then go to Dashboards, and where it's got Dwains dashboard, click on that and click Set as Default on this device, and then Close. Now when you go to the top left, you should see you've only got Dwains dashboard as a choice. And when you navigate through, you can see how it's sectioned everything based on areas. Now, if you didn't want this dashboard installed or you want to remove it, I'm now going to show you the reverse steps because it wasn't immediately clear. You'll need to remove it from devices and integration before you remove it from HACS, and I'll show you what happens if you do that first. So if I go straight into HACS, and then I'm going to search for Dwains, then I'm going to click on these 3 dots and do remove. You'll see you get this message here that says the Dwains dashboard integration is configured or ignored. You need to delete the configuration for it before removing it from HACS. And if you select Navigate, it will take you to the integration section. You then need to do a search for Dwains. So if I just go back a few steps, you initially go to Settings, go to Devices and Services, and then you do a search for Dwains here. Click on that, and then go to these three dots, and then just select delete, and then delete again. Once you've done that, you can then go into HACS. And now when I do remove, it's actually going to remove it. Now that that's been removed, you'll probably see here, there's no overview tab. So I seem to have lost all my dashboards, and that's because it's still defaulting to the Dwains dashboard. So if I go back into settings and then just look for dashboards, we're now going to change it. So instead of it being Dwains dashboard, it's now going to go back to overview, and we're going to choose select as default on this device. And then whilst we're at it, we're just going to give Home Assistant another restart. So go to Developer Tools, check the configuration is fine, click Restart. And once Home Assistant has restarted, that dashboard has been removed. I'm now going to show you a custom card you can download from HACS, which is the weather card. So if you head over to HACS, and then from the search, if you just type in clock-weather-card, and this is the one you want. Once again, you have got the choice to manually install it, which it details here. Otherwise, if you're just doing it via the HACS, you can click download. So I'm going to select that, then select download, then select reload. And if I just copy some example code, so I'm just going to scroll down, and you can see here, it's listed some code you can use for one of your cards. So I'm just going to copy that and use the minimal setup. Now I'm going to go to my overview tab, and I'm just going to quickly create a new view. I'll make this one masonry view. I'll click save. Now I'm going to add the card, and I'm just going to scroll down and select manual. And then I'm going to paste in that code I copied earlier. Then click save. Click done. And then you've got a dashboard with a time and date and weather, which looks quite nice. I'm now going to add some buttons to this dashboard. So if I click on Edit Dashboard, then go to Add Card, and I'm just going to choose Button. And I'm just going to repeat this 5 times. Now that I've added these buttons, you'll notice immediately with masonry, you kind of got little control as to the order of the buttons go, or if they all go to one side horizontally, or if they go vertically down. Now, while you can't do this natively as part of the user interface, what you can do is use vertical stack or horizontal stack, which I'm now going to show you. So I'm just going to quickly delete these. And now this time we're either going to add horizontal or vertical stack cards. So if you click Add Card, and then from the search, you can either type in horizontal, and you'll see here you've got horizontal stack, or you can type in vertical, and you've got vertical stack. The process is basically exactly the same. I'm just going to start off with vertical stack. And it's then going to take you to this user interface. I'm now going to repeat the steps. I'm going to choose the button card but I'm going to add those 5 buttons. So I'm just going to change the entity to lounge, and you'll see there's a number here and a plus icon. So for each entity you're adding, you're just going to click the plus icon. Then I'm going to find that button and repeat the same steps, type in the entity. So I'm just going to quickly do that for those 5 entities. Now I'm going to click save. And you can see all of these buttons are now vertically aligned. So that's one way you can kind of get around that limitation when using masonry. I'm just going to change that to horizontal now. So if I go into edit, and instead of going through that add card and repeating all the steps, you can just go into show code editor. And you'll see here, you just change that vertical to horizontal. Then click save. And now you can see they're aligned horizontally. One thing I don't like though is the size is completely different when it's going horizontally instead of vertically, but at least that's a method that you can kind of get around those sort of limitations when using the masonry view. I'm just going to delete that and show you another choice you can use, which is known as grid view. So I'm going to click on add card. And then from here, if you do a search for grid, and then select that option, and I'm essentially going to repeat exactly the same steps. I'm just going to add those 5 buttons. Then I'm going to click save. So at the moment, you'll see they're all grouped together, but they're 3 wide and 2 going down. There is a setting you can change known as columns. So if I go back into edit, and you'll see there's this column tab here. And if I just zoom out, and I'm going to bump the number up. So at the moment, you can see 3 wide and 2 going down, and I'm just going to change the number to 4. And now you can see it's 4 wide. And if I change it to 5, it's now 5 wide. And if I just keep dropping the number down, you can then choose how many columns wide, which then dictates how many of those buttons or entities will be going down together. There's a final setting you can also change here, known as render cards as squares. And if I just toggle it off and on, you can see a slight change between the shape of those boxes because it's just making them equal squares. So that's a bit of a personal preference as to how you want that or whether you want squares off or on. I'm just going to quickly go into show editor just so you can see the YAML. So it looks like that. You've got type is grid, square is true, and then you've got columns down here, which is free. So you can change it on the fly in the code editor and you can straight away see how it's going to work. So I'm just going to come out of that. And it's now looking like this. I'm now going to quickly skim through and cover exactly the same but using sections. Here's one I've made earlier and it's more or less identical. The only slight difference is if I just scroll down here, I'm going to add a new section, click the plus icon, and all of the parts in here is pretty much identical. If you want to use grid, you can type in grid and go through the same steps. If you want to go down the horizontal stack, exactly the same works. And also if you want to use the vertical stack, you can also do the same and use that option here. The only slight difference is this example here where I've added some buttons. If I go into this edit option here, you'll see there's a slider bar called width. If I change that and make it a bit further and then do save, now you'll see these buttons are much wider because I didn't use vertical or horizontal stack. As you widen it, it's going to automatically widen them horizontally. I'm just going to put that setting back. Now for this one, which is grid, it's more or less exactly the same. If you go within this part here and do edit, you can still render cards as squares, which is fine. If I just cancel that setting. Now if I try to make this one bigger, it won't actually make much of a difference. I'm going to make it wider. And you'll see here, it's just made a wide gap because this is dictated based on columns. Because if I want to make the actual buttons wider, as I mentioned in the masonry example, you'd click on this edit and then you'd apply the columns part here. So at the moment it's set to 3, and if I just change it up or down, that's where it's going to change. I'm just going to put that width back to how it was. Now for vertical stack, because I've already specified it as vertical stack, as you could probably guess, if I go into here and I adjust the width, it's just going to add blank space. So as I scroll down, you can see it's now here, but they haven't moved over to the right because it's set to be vertical. So I'm just going to put that back. And the same thing is going to be for the horizontal one. If I change this and I make this wider, it's not really going to make any difference. You can see here, they're already horizontal, and you just got this extra sort of blank space that doesn't really serve any purpose. So I'm just going to put that back to 1. Now with sections, while you can duplicate the cards within this section by using a duplicate icon, just like you can with masonry, you can't duplicate the sections itself. There's kind of a way around this, because if I click on the edit button, what I can do is go to here, then go to edit in YAML. And if I just copy all of that YAML and then do cancel, now if I go back and I'm just going to quickly make another card, and if I just do edit, and now select edit in YAML, what I can do is just paste all of that YAML and then hit save, and it has somewhat copied the card. So that's kind of a way around it. Another thing you might also want to do is, although you can't copy views, you can more or less do exactly the same thing. So let's say I want to copy this view. If I just click on edit view and then do edit in YAML, I'm just going to copy all of this, close that window. I'm now going to click the plus icon, do edit in YAML, and I'm just going to paste everything in here apart from right at the top. I'm just going to give it a different name. So instead of it be called demo sections, I'm just going to put a 2 at the end. And I'll do the same there for the path. Then I'm going to hit save and then done. And now you can see I've got 2 copies. That tip's quite useful because something I did earlier is when I was really tweaking one of my dashboards, I made a mistake and completely screwed it up. And I kind of wish I had just made a duplicate, or at least copied that YAML, saved it somewhere so I could revert back. So that's a handy little tip that you may find useful, or perhaps you knew already. Now, it's all good and well me showing you how to customize the views for how you want them. But one thing you need to put into consideration is what devices are you customizing these views for? Now, while I'm showing this off from a desktop PC, 99% of the time, I'm realistically going to be looking at my dashboard from a mobile phone or a tablet, which will be a completely different resolution and reflect the layout of how the cards are showing. Ideally, you should change the views from the actual device you want them to show from, or the next best thing is, I'm using Microsoft Edge as a web browser, and you can emulate those devices to see how the views will look like. So if I just click on these 3 dots, go to More Tools, then go to Developer Tools, or you can press Ctrl Shift and I. And you'll see an option here where you can toggle between emulation. And now I've got this option here where I can actually choose a device. So if I was using an iPad Pro, I know that that view is going to look like this. Or if I was using maybe on iPhone SE. So if I just open the two tabs, if I just toggle between one and the other, you can really see it's going to look completely different, especially if the device is rotated. So if I just change it to like that, that looks quite rubbish. So you might want to either edit the view from within the device that you're going to be using it from, or use this emulation option. There's another thing you can do is, if your device isn't shown from that list, if you go from here and then go to settings, you can then select devices, and you've got the option of add custom device. And there's also devices here which will show as available to use. So I could choose add custom device, give it a name, give it a resolution, add that device, and then just make sure it's checked in this box of ones to use. So I'm just going to come out of that. So it's here where you can just toggle between emulation, and you can sort of see that difference. So that's just an option you might want to consider. So I thought I'd just bring that up because it's something I spent ages making all the changes on the PC. Then I'd go over to the tablet and find it looks rubbish, and I'd just keep going through that cycle. When had I done something like this in the first place, it would have saved a lot of time and made it way easier. Now, this is an example view I've been working on for one of my tablets running in kiosk mode. I've got one example in the section view, and here you can see I've got Ring doorbell footage. I can then click on that. It opens another view where I can see the footage. I can either click the back button, or I can just click on the actual image itself, and it automatically goes back to that same view. If I click on the Masonry one, which is more or less exactly the same style, I can click on that camera feed, and then when I click on here, it will go back to that same view. The way I've done this is it's actually two separate views they're going to, and it's just a navigation button to say, go to this view afterwards. But what's interesting about this setup is I've got this feature here where it's showing the bus timetables. And this would be quite interesting if you maybe post in the comments section if you've got anything similar where you've got like a feed of maybe the bus timetables or the train timetables and how you've managed to get it to work. Because the way I've done it is a little bit long-winded. I tried to get it to work by finding a source online that it can pull the data from, but it ended up being more complicated than I was expecting. So what I've actually done is I've manually wrote a CSV file of all the bus times from a particular stop. And then I've got a Node-RED process flow, which is essentially showing this almost as if it's real time, but it's really just an offline copy. And it will show the bus timetables, and it will also show when the next available bus is. And if it's got to a certain time of the day, and it will just say no more buses today. For those of you who are interested how I did this, I'm just going to show you the Node-RED process flow, which is this here. Now, to be honest, I'm going to pretend I know what I'm doing, but I did use ChatGPT a lot with the code, but it's not as bad as it sounds. So there's a good chance I may not have done it the most logical, smart way. So what I've done is got 3 CSV files. One is for bus 23, one is for bus 200, and one is for bus 10. That then reads the CSV file, which is this part here, and you can see that's the location it's pulling it from. So you've got timetable, which is bus 23, and then for the other one, 200, it's called timetable 200, and then for bus 10, it's known as timetable-10. These process flows are more or less exactly the same, so I only really need to show you one of them. If I go to this function node here, and what it's basically doing is there's 3 different scenarios where the buses aren't the same. You've got workday, Saturday, and Sunday. If I bring up the CSV file before I go too heavily into this code, I can probably explain it a little bit better. So I'm just going to open up one of the sample timetables. So if you zoom in here, you can see you've got day, bus, and times. And what's happening is based on the time of the day, it's going to pull one of these records. If I just turn on filter, so you can see you've got work day, Saturday, and Sunday. Now, if I just close that and go back to the Node-RED process flow, so here it's got the routes, and because each spreadsheet is different, it will either be saying 23 to Horsham or 23 to Crawley, and then there'll be another one where it's 200 to Horsham, 200 to Crawley. It's based on wherever you live, but I've just programmed it based on that. And then it's basically going to take that data from the CSV file, and based on those conditions, it's then essentially going to spit out the time of the most recent bus that's available. If I just cancel that, you've then got this part here where it's going to format and split, because that particular CSV has two different buses. There's one bus going in one direction and one bus going in the other direction, which is why it's actually looking for either to Horsham or to Crawley. And then it's got these scenarios here. It's going to tell you the bus and how much time is remaining, which is this part here or this part here. If I close that, you've then got these two core service nodes. And what that's basically doing is I've created multiple input text values. And there's one which is called next bus 23, and it's going to change the value of that payload. And then it will do exactly the same for this one, which will be next bus Crawley. So there's various different input texts I've made that it's going to actually add the data to, and that's going to be updating every 59 seconds. I will be publishing this Node-RED process flow just in case any of you want to use it or recycle it for something you're doing. But it would be interesting in the comments section if you're doing something similar like this, and if you know a better way of how to make this work for yourself. Now I'm just going to show you the input text I had to create. So I'm just going to go over to this tab. If you go into File Editor, now because my input text is split, I'm going to show you the location where I've put it. So I'm going to go to the config folder, go to input text, and you'll see I've got a file here called bus. I click into that, and these are the buses which will be multiple input text that the Node-RED process flow is then going to update. Now, if your YAML wasn't split, it's going to look something more like this, where it have input text, and then you'd have these values. I'm just going to cancel that because I don't need to save changes. Now, in terms of how I've done the formatting of this part here, I've also used another custom card. I'm just going to go into Edit Dashboard and then click Edit here. Now, while it looks a mess at this particular part, it actually looks completely different. And the card I've used it's known as HTML template card. It allows you to basically use a combination of Ginger and HTML, and it's a really cool card to use. The thing I like about this is the entities, which are here. I wanted it where it would say the entity and say the times, but I wanted them to be different sizes. And using this particular card, you can really make all those minor changes. So if I wanted one of the fonts to be a bit bigger, I'm just going to change this part here. You can see that's going up now, where it's got incoming buses. And if I look at this one here, I'm just going to bump this one up. You can see Rainbow Field is also now getting bigger. And if I go to one of the other ones, let's make that 160. I can also mess around with the spaces between the text. So I quite like this because it allows you to really have a custom sized text and custom spacing. So you may want to install that card. I'm just going to show you where it is from HACS. So if I just go into HACS and then just do a search, it's this one here, which is known as HTML Ginger 2 template card. So I'll link this one in the description in case you want to use that card. But it just allowed me to have this sort of fancy bus timetable and also in a formatting that just looks quite presentable. And that wraps up this deep dive into dashboards. I hope it's helped you take your setup to the next level. And if you found it useful, give it a like and consider subscribing so you don't miss out on what's coming next. I'm planning on making a follow-up video on setting up the tablet in kiosk mode, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.